Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Justin Santa Barbara. I recently joined Google, but I also, originally started the kops project, and I've also been a maintainer on the AWS cloud provider code in Kubernetes for a while. And so today, I thought we might want to try, this is a proposal, an experiment, which is, so you may not like it, and feel free to leave at any time, I won't be offended. So the idea is that basically, the idea I had was that we would try to get code into Kubernetes or understand, or kops. Kops are pretty easier to get code into. Try to understand what that process looks like. If you've never done a PR before, it can be your first PR, and we'll try to make it, even if it's just a typo fix, going through the process of going through the PR, and we can see what that looks like. If you are more experienced, we can do some deeper design review collaboratively. I was not thinking that too many people would show up. We're okay at the moment, but there are, I think, 140 people that replied. So if we get up to the 100 mark, we certainly won't be able to have, certainly once you divide an hour and a bit by 140, you're not left with a lot of time. So we'll see how many people show up, and we'll see how it goes. But this is an experiment to see what that's like and whether this works. The goal is that I would like for more people to feel like they can contribute to Kubernetes. I personally think it's an excellent project to contribute to. I think it's a very welcoming community, other than myself, but it's a welcoming community, and I would love to help other people in any way I can to feel part of that. But this is an experiment, and as such, experiments can fail. So please give feedback if you would rather do something else. If you'd rather spend this hour somewhere else, you can. And if you would rather, we can talk about, we can dig into the kops code or into the AWS cloud provider code or anything like that if you want to, or we can break into groups and talk about, more of a traditional SIG deep dive where we talk about, our collective individual challenges and how we have solved them. So that's an option as well. If what I was thinking is the goals. Understand the PR process if you haven't done that before. Get your first PR into Kubernetes or into kops, and if we want to, if you have a little bit more experience, or even if you just have a problem and you'd like to address it as a group, we can talk about how we would go about solving that that particular issue, whatever it may be, and hopefully, sometimes the GitHub PR process can be a little daunting. It can feel quite adversarial. The SIG meetings are not always the best forum, and I think face-to-face can be great. So if people have individual topics they'd like to discuss, I heard authentication was mentioned earlier. I remember you had some rolling update, which I have not looked at, I'm sorry, but I will. We can try to do that. You know the numbers. It's like having Brian Grant in the room. Okay, so, that is an experiment, and I don't know, so what do people want to do? Do people want to volunteer that has willingly given up his PR for public review? So we can do the PR review. You can get a feel for how I personally, as a reviewer, do a PR review, and sort of the other side, what happens behind the scenes, or if you wanted to be a maintainer, what that would entail. Who wants to put your hands up right now if you want to do, you can put your hands up on multiple ones if you want to look at the code review process, a public code review. Oh, pretty good, all right. Put your hands up if you would, and multiple hands can go up, if you would like to do your first PR, so not if you've done multiple ones. All right, a couple, about 8, I guess. That's awesome. And if you would if it's not your first PR, but you'd like to go into more detail on a particular PR or design that you might have. Oh, front row. That's probably not a coincidence. And if you would like instead to do more of a traditional discussion type topic, where we talk about what our individual challenges are, and then we break out into groups. A lot of overlap there, but yeah, there's 3 or 4 people, okay. It seems like everyone wants to see a PR review. Why don't we start with a PR review? We have a willing victim, and it's going to go well, so it's most of the work is already done, but we can go through it and we can look at what is involved, and hopefully that will be illuminating for the people that care, and then we can that will hopefully let people do a first PR if they want to do it in the background. And we can then also talk about some of the other issues. And maybe that will actually form, when we go and gather people's topics, maybe that will branch off into like subgroups that actually have areas of interest. Does that sound good? Some nods? The process of doing a PR is definitely documented online. There is, sorry, the question, as I heard it, the question was, is this available online, the process of doing a PR? Is that right? Yes. In the Kubernetes case. So yes, it is. There is a contributor guide. There are probably several contributor guides. So that will talk you through at least the mechanics of it. I think Tim Hawken has a video somewhere where he does a PR review of a non-trivial PR. So that's also available. I think the hope is that by doing it quickly together that we can sort of address questions as they come up and maybe sort of put a more human face on it, maybe. But yes, that you could also find the information that information online. I'm not offended if you want to go have a beer while we do this then, if you prefer to learn that way. Okay. I'm not going to repeat that. Let's see, this needs to be a little bit bigger. Sorry. Whoa, that might be too big. We have a willing victim, this gentleman right here. Thank you, sir, for your kind volunteering to participate. So we have here a commit against kops. It actually was opened, what is that, 2 months ago? Wow, sorry. So it was opened a while ago. That doesn't mean that it's not good. It means that I probably just haven't got round to it. You can see that the PR here is, so kops has a feature that enables, would you like to describe the PR? Here we go.
When you're using the toolbox template command to template some YAML, you can specify values, but currently if you specify multiple values, there's no deep merge of the values, so that means if you have a map with deep structure, a second value will override everything that's in there. So yeah. I want the behavior to be similar to Helm, which we're also using, so hence the copying.
Yeah, so thank you, that's wonderful. And you can see, which is something excellent here, is he has nicely said that this code was copied from the Kubernetes Helm project, that we have to be careful in terms of licensing of code. It is fine to do so as long as it's all CLA projects, is my understanding. I'm not a lawyer. It is fine to do so as long as it's all Apache licensed CLA Kubernetes projects. I think it gets a lot trickier in general if you didn't write the code. But in this case, I think that's likely fine. So you can see after the PR was committed, we have our friend, the CI robot has come along. So he says, the CI robot says, before we can look at your pull request, you have to sign the contributor license agreement. So the contributor license agreement is a requirement for all the Kubernetes projects. It is tied to your email address. You only have to do this once, you don't have to do it every PR. It is not the best experience, and I've actually realized how this might be a slight blocker for your first PR. So it might be that you get your first PR in, but we can't merge it until you kind of get your CLA approved. But you have to go through a process. You have to decide whether you're contributing as an individual or as part of your employer, and to make sure that your employer is on board. But once you go through the process, we all should be able to see. Yes, so when you do a commit in Git, you have the email address on there. So it's that email address that is used. And if you have multiple commits and they have multiple email addresses, every single one of them must match the database. And what happens is if you click through, you go onto a site run by, I thought it was run by the Linux Foundation, but anyway, there is a website where you go and, as an individual, for example, if I sign up, I probably will know that I'm signed up already, but we'll see. So I can contribute as an individual. I will type in I will log in. Lucky. So there I specified, I'm logging in currently with Google, and the CLA bot can be, angers easily. I probably previously logged in using either my GitHub or using a username and password. I certainly did it so long ago, or maybe I did it so long ago that it doesn't know, but I do have CLA. And what you should see here if you're a newer user is you will see effectively a license agreement stating that you, stating that you like have the authority to donate the code, as it were, that sort of thing.
Does it make a difference if you do the CLA with a company email or everything else?
The question was, does it make a difference if you do it with your company name or as an individual or through your company? It certainly makes a difference. I did it as an individual. You have to make sure that your employer is on board with you. If you do it as an individual with your, it does not, it doesn't matter what your email address is, if that's what you mean. So, like technically, I think I signed up with what looks like a corporate email address, like a FathomDB.com email address, and it doesn't matter at all. And bizarrely, I'm now into my account, despite being access denied previously. But you can see that I have been the site user for, no, well, that's not true either. Anyway, somewhere in here, it is happy. So that is the process that you would have to go through on the CLA bot. I wanted to show what actually happens in terms of, sorry, we're getting rat-holed on this. So getting stuck on the CLA is common and annoying. It's not only annoying in terms of the legal requirement, but there's also, it's not the best. I've certainly, it can be a temperamental system at times, and eventually, what normally happens is once you sign the CLA, you will comment, and the CLA bot will remove. There we are. No, what did it do? There we are. Yes. So, okay, at some stage you signed the CLA. It removed and added the CNCF CLA no and added CNCF CLA yes. I presume that means yes. But anyway, you now have this label here on your PR which says this happy green CNCF yes. You'll see underneath that the label which says size L, so size large. Essentially that's a count of the lines of code. My rule of thumb as a reviewer is that the amount of time it takes me to review it goes up as the square of the number of lines. So if you send a one-line PR, I will likely get it through in unit time, whereas if you send a 1,000-line PR, it will never get merged. That's not true, but it certainly, it is a lot harder to review bigger PRs, and if you can take a big PR and split it into two PRs of half the size, it will help get it. It makes my life a lot easier, and also tends to mean that there are fewer comments, and it just makes for an easier cycle, and they'll get merged faster. And it's fine to have a PR that, or a series of PRs that build on each other in that way. You assigned it to GeoJazz. The bot suggested you assign it to GeoJazz, and you assigned it to GeoJazz. So that typically, this is the GitHub list of people that are recommended to review it, and I, as a reviewer, can see the PRs that are assigned to me, but I typically work my way backwards through the queue anyway. Chris Love has commented, that we should probably give some documentation as to where the code came from, and he says that it's fine because it's all open source. So that I agree with. And then he comments, okay to test. So all the Kubernetes projects have very sophisticated end-to-end testing. So I think if we click through at the bottom here, we should see. So you can see that on this PR that was run, we clicked off, we fired off a Travis build. We also did a full end-to-end test against Kubernetes. So if we look in here, you can see that we actually fired up a Kubernetes cluster on AWS. Thank you, Arun, for the credits. And so we actually ran a full Kubernetes end-to-end regression test against this PR, even though this PR doesn't touch. Even a docs PR will do the same thing. So we ran it against real infrastructure. And that might not be 100% safe. So for example, we want to make sure that a PR doesn't say, go launch 1 million GPU instances in Bitcoin mine. So that's why we have the OK to test thing. So the original, we need some human in the loop to make sure that the PR isn't like going Bitcoin mining. Yes?
So for those tests, who is implementing those tests? It is developer, contributor, or?
Yeah, so that test suite actually runs it's in the Kubernetes, the Kubernetes end-to-end tests are in the Kubernetes repo under E2E, test E2E, under here. So for example, let's do an auth test. So there's this testing framework. So the idea being that when you contribute a feature to Kubernetes, it is great if you make sure that it has E2E testing on it as well. Not only does it help your reviewer of your feature know that you've implemented your feature correctly and helps you know that you've implemented your feature correctly, but it also means that it will not break in future because every PR that runs in future will also run your E2E test. So my rule of thumb is if it doesn't have an E2E test, someone has probably broken it, and therefore it's probably broken. So you should try to, it's important to have an E2E test when you're writing newer features. And we also have a kops. We have the E2E test that is basically bringing up a cluster and then running the Kubernetes E2E test. And we also have some integration tests in kops that do a whole bunch of tests around, we have unit tests, and we have more like integration tests that generate the Terraform code for different cluster configurations and make sure that it is what we expect, which is how we know whether like if you're changing the way that kops generates AWS objects, it's how we are able to see the changes and make sure that they are reasonable, because whenever we do a kops upgrade, we want to make sure that we don't change everyone's clusters without really thinking it through. So that's why we have those tests. And so we have the OK to test, another bot. So there's this whole series of bots that are run by the test infra team. And they watch the GitHub comments and typically communicate through labels. So here Chris writes /OK to test, and the robot needs OK to test. And then I think the tests ran, and presumably it said presumably the test failed, so it would have given one of these testing boxes with a big X on one of those, and I presume you fixed whatever it was unhappy about. And then Chris writes how much he loves our tests. Oh.
Is that a deliberate funny with the insight as into insight violence, or are you looking for insight as into insight?
I believe that is a typo. That's, yes. So the question was, is insight a joke? It might be an insight joke. Oh. Thank you, I appreciate that. All right, and then we have some more comments. Obviously, someone else's PR went in. So when the bot says needs rebase, this means that it's constantly testing whether your PR is able to merge or not. I don't actually know why we have this, given that GitHub can do the same thing, but there's a label needs rebase. So you rebased. You can see we pushed 3 new commits. Then I had an objection of some sort. I think there was some duplicate code, so you cleaned that up. And now we're a month later, or 2 weeks later, I now refer it to the person that originally wrote the functionality in question, which is that this is technically a breaking change. This is a behavioral change. It's in our toolbox area, which is sort of a playground area of kops. So we don't have particularly strong guarantees about the toolbox area, so we'll tend to like do the right thing in the toolbox, whereas outside of the toolbox, we will not necessarily do the right thing if it means breaking people's clusters. So like outside of toolbox, like compatibility is paramount, and so it would have needed at the very least a release note and probably some sort of legacy compatibility flag, but this is in the toolbox, so it's okay. I just want to check with the guy who originally wrote it, and his name is Gambol99, and I think I got that by looking at git blame. So you can always, when you go into the code, you can always like do a blame on any function. So this is in toolbox template. So sorry. So this is in toolbox template. And you do the blame, and you can see who wrote the various things. So a lot of it was done by Gambol. Some changes to the headers, but yeah, so there's a couple of people involved, but like I think Gambol was the one that I thought would have the best idea of whether this was a good thing to do. So I pinged him just to make sure, and then I think we're now, where do we go? And Gambol says, looks good to me. So he's good with it, I'm good with it. Mike Splain has commented and says he's also good with it. And you can see here, so basically everyone is happy now. This PR is ready to merge. Great. You can see though we need a couple of things. We need approved and we need LGTM. So it already has OK to test. LGTM and approved, I think there are formal definitions which probably I'm probably gonna mangle this a little bit, but LGTM is more of a general like oversight of the code type thing. So typically a lot of people can give you LGTM and only very few people can, or a fewer subset of people can give you approved. LGTM is, yeah, this code looks fine, like it doesn't have any obvious typos or spelling mistakes or whatever it isn't launching, a million GPU instances. So this looks fine. Approved is more like, yes, this is ready to go. I actually can give you both. So I can just do approve LGTM. Why don't we do it one at a time? I can do LGTM. So these slash commands, there's a list of them, I think, in test infra somewhere. The ones you use almost all the time are LGTM, retest. The ETE test has a pretty high flake rate, so a lot of the time your tests will fail, even though it isn't really your fault. So do feel free to run a retest. So I did the LGTM command, and sorry, finishing the list of ones. LGTM, approve, OK to test are sort of the ones that get used a lot. Assign is also nice, and if you feel your PR is being neglected, you can always at someone, which is just the normal GitHub feature. But I LGTM'd it, the bot has realized it, and now it says, bizarrely, because I'm also, yeah, so we recently changed this, so now an LGTM from an approver now means approve, I think. That we keep changing this, we keep flip-flopping this, but currently an LGTM from an approver means approve, so I have approved that, and now you can see we're doing a final round of testing, and then this will actually, I believe, this will merge. I might just give it an approve anyway, just to be sure. So what it's going to do is it's going to run the tests in the background, and then it will merge for us. So your code is not merged by a human, or very rarely will it be merged by a human. The bot will, things have gone wrong when it's merged by a human. The code will, the end-to-end testing infrastructure will run the tests again, and then the merge bot will go ahead and actually merge your code. And we even have you can see the notification the PR is approved. So it's getting ready to go in. There is a submit queue. So I don't know if it's operating. When it comes to particularly like code freeze time in Kubernetes, people eagerly watch the submit queue. Let's do the Kubernetes one. So right now we are not approaching code freeze. So there are only 3 PRs in the queue. When it comes to freeze time, there will be like 20 or 30 PRs in the queue, and people will be like jockeying for position in the queue and like trying to get the right labels on there. But right now we're in a pretty not so busy time, so that will probably take, I would guess, 20 minutes or so to go run through the testing, but then your PR will be merged. Thank you so much for being our willing victim. I don't know if anyone else has any questions on that process. I hope that, we didn't really go through the code. That was my mistake. Should we quickly go through the code or not? It's too late. I'd already gone through the code, so I know it's fine. But yeah, the code is, let's go through the code quickly. So the code is pretty simple. It creates this nice function, merge values, which effectively recursively runs through the code and does a recursive merge. And I believe there's even a unit test, if I recall correctly. Yes, there is a nice unit test and a nice comment saying where it came from, which is doubly great. And so we effectively run through a quick couple of test scenarios. The only thing we probably should have done is done a release note, but because it's the toolbox, it is less important. So when we do the next release of kops, there will be a note in the list of PRs for this, and I will probably try to pull out a call to attention that if you're using toolbox merge, that be aware that the behavior has changed for the better, but that it may surprise you. Sorry, question or a couple of questions. Let's bring out some roaming mics here. Well, that's good. We got number 2.
Just on your question about release notes. It was just on your question about release notes. So I think in Kubernetes they've got a convention of having a release note block. Why, or are you thinking about the same?
Yeah, I think that would be, we don't have that at the moment in kops. It would certainly, the reason, so yeah, the question was, oh, well, we know the question. In Kubernetes, there's a release comment that is structured and goes in there in the I think it's in the description of the GitHub PR. It has to be, not in the comment, in the commit itself. And it would make my life easier. Honestly, I don't know. I think that is a note for me to go and do that, because it would certainly help for compiling the release notes. Every release of Kubernetes, compiling the release notes, and every release of kops, it is a long and difficult process. It's fairly easy to produce a list of all the PRs that have changed, but the challenge is to, like, in that list of 2,000 or whatever it is PRs, to like get the right things, draw the people's attention to the right things. And so yes, that is a great suggestion to actually use the release note infrastructure that is in Kubernetes itself. And so actually, let's quickly show that. If we go into a Kubernetes PR, let's see. So we have any? You will see the release note block. I'm sure people have seen this, but okay, well, there it is, the release note, and he says there is no release note required. Let's see, let's find one that's maybe more interesting. That one, I think, smart, maybe not. Nope, no release note there. So yes, that's another issue. This one looks better, this one should have one. Enforcing compliance with the release note body is also tricky, but yes. It would be helpful. It is a good idea that we should probably try doing it, because it certainly takes a lot of my time in kops of doing a release. Any other? Wow, okay, cool, let's go there and then to you, sorry.
Is it advised to squash commits or not?
Yeah, it's great to squash the commits, particularly so structuring of commits. When you have a big PR, it is very helpful to break up the PR thematically. If you make an API change in Kubernetes, we have a bunch of code that goes and generates generated code. And so I think actually in your other PR, we can see an example of this. So here, our victim has added a field to the API, or a whole structure in the field. And you can see, so that's the actual real stuff there. And then we have, a whole bunch of generated conversion code here. So you can see that a lot of this PR is generated conversion code, and it is often helpful to split out the generated conversion code into a separate PR. Let's see if, a separate commit. And yes, good job. So, oh, well, no. But then when it comes to merging it, I think it's sort of the merger's discretion as to whether or not to squash those commits. Sometimes they will ask you to, sometimes they won't. It's nice to, my opinion is as long as the number of commits is reasonable, then we don't typically ask to squash. But yeah, you'll find some mergers or some approvers that do ask you to squash a bigger chain. It certainly is helpful. The same argument about n squared applies. If you can like divide your one big PR into 5 smaller PRs, 2 of which are generated automatically, and therefore I don't even need to read, right? Then that's great. And I think we have tests that will fail if your generated code is not correct. So that's sort of why it's sort of safe to just scan over that code. It's not like anyone's going to read that generated code. And then squashing, yeah. I think we have another PR where, so I think we have another PR in kops, for example, where, let's see, I think the will, there. So this PR, for typos, will with one L to will, that is a perfectly good contribution and is great. However, yeah, having this as 4 commits might be excessive. So depending on my mood, I may or may not ask him to squash. I probably won't because he actually does a whole lot of work. I think it's a he. Adam does a whole lot of work to fix these typos, so I probably will not require it, but normally 4 commits would be like not required. Their 1 commit would be much cleaner. It's a balance, right?
So if something goes wrong, how do you undo? Is there a process of undoing things, like the, yeah, not a reset, an actual undo?
Like a git revert. So there is, yes, we will often have particularly in Kubernetes, I don't want to be like kops never makes a mistake. Like Kubernetes has a lot of interactions that make PRs like harder to understand, and so we'll often put something in, looks good, and then, you know, during a month later, like some interaction and it has to be reverted, and people will commit will PR and approve a revert commit. So it still goes through the full process, but I probably can find one. Let's see. It's 1,000 reverts. Okay. Okay, so sometimes there are revert wars. But for example, like here's a simple revert. So this person has obviously decided that this commit AE73 is a bad commit or has introduced some problem, and so has typed git revert AE73BED, and then committed that and pushed it up as a PR and proposed it, and so it goes through the same process. And then I presume like one of those ones that was revert was, well, revert would be someone putting it back in. Revert would then be deciding that actually it was, again, still bad. So hopefully 3 is the max, and that was just the text matching. I don't think I've ever seen a 3, so there we go. That's impressive. Any other questions on the like how I look at PRs and that sort of process? Or, yeah? The question was, should you sign your commits? Do we require commits to be signed? We do not require commits to be signed. So I guess there are several attacks that in theory leaves us open to. I guess because the code still gets reviewed, it's unlikely that you're going to get bad code into Kubernetes. I guess maybe a bad actor could have stolen your laptop and pretended to be you, and where this may actually get interesting is, we're moving to a world where the Kubernetes code lives in more and more repositories. And we haven't fully decided how to do a release of Kubernetes when that release spans 100 projects. And I suspect that may well involve someone signing a commit saying, like, I think this releases this particular set of SHAs or something like that. But we have yet to see what that really looks like. But so far, you do have to have 2-factor authentication enabled on GitHub if you are some level of participation. Like I think if you're in the Kubernetes org, which means you can be assigned tasks, and you have to be in the org to be up to approve or LGTM a commit. So not required yet. I will show you one other thing we don't really use it a lot in kops, but there is this notion of owners. So the question is, the question which came into my mind is, can I go into like any bit of Kubernetes? I'm an approver in the AWS cloud provider. Can I go into anything and go and like approve code? And the answer is no. And the reason is this owners notion. So owners says that for this subdirectory and all subdirectories underneath it, unless there's another owner's file which overrides it, that these are the people that are allowed to review, i.e. LGTM, and these are the people that are allowed to approve. So one of these 5 people has to approve effectively any new package. So these are, I think, like, the gang of elders, really some of the most trusted people in Kubernetes. And then if we go into one of the other ones, so if we go into cloud provider, right? So if we go into cloud provider, we can see that there's probably a more liberal policy in this directory. Yeah, so we still have a fairly small set of approvers that can basically approve new cloud providers, would probably be the thing, or changes to the cloud provider API. We have a very much broader set of reviewers. And then if you go into AWS, you will see the list of people in here. So, there are only 4 approvers in here. And so when you're contributing to Kubernetes itself, it's a very, very good idea to keep your changes very scoped, because if you span multiple directories, you have to get approval from every person in every directory that you touch, or a person in every directory that you touch, which means you either have to go find one of those magic 5 people that has approvers everywhere, or you have to go and get 10 people's approvals. It also means that if you have this drives the suggestion bot, which recommends people to be to assign the issue to. And it also means that if you're chasing LGDM or approve, that these are the people you should sort of go bother. So, always feel free to probably ping me on Slack, although honestly, my Slack is now also a disaster zone, but yes, that's how you can sort of determine who to chase for reviews, because yeah, people, they do fall off the radar, and yeah, it can be good. So I think did you have one? Sorry, and then.
Is there a number of LGTMs that is a must for a PR to get approved?
So it's only one LGTM and one approve, so you don't need multiples. The LGTM, I think, is more of a sort of initial pass, and then the approve is the one that actually has to go in. And yes, we don't have any multiple approvers required yet, unless you span multiple directories.
Who actually has to do /assign, like me as a submitter or anyone else?
So I thought the bots did it for you. Is that not right? The bots don't do it for you. We
I submitted one now.
May we review it in public? Thank you. Hope it's not controversial. This is rubbish. Just kidding. All right, let's see what we got. Typo fix. Oh, you failed the tests. Is that you?
Yeah, it was me actually. I don't have the CLI yet.
Okay, so we have a PR. Thank you. And so I think you can click request there for a reviewer, and I think it's suggesting. So here it's saying your PR is not approved, which is what you expect, and it's saying here's the link to the owner's file, which has. You need an approver from this list, and it was suggesting that you can assign Andrew Sykim. You can also assign anyone you see on the list. I think.
You don't get mad if you assign someone else.
It will not get mad. No, it does not get mad. I think what it does currently is it does sort of round robin rotation to try to spread the load. But yes, no, you can always assign anyone you want, and round robin is not the way to go. So if you've been having a conversation with someone, let's say, me, then you should assign me. You should not assign someone else who doesn't really have context on it. Yeah. So it's saying you have to go through the CLA bot, sadly. And then it's saying, it's waiting for OK to test. I'm not sure why you failed testing. That's a little odd, but OK. And this is a good PR. There are indeed 4 options, well spotted, and we wrote 3 instead of 4. So I will go ahead and, what failed? Yes, so you have the X because you haven't done the CLA, but I can go ahead and OK to test this anyway. And actually, I can approve it. And then if you sign the CLA, it will go in. Yes, it will go in. Yes, the minute if you rebase your PR, you'll lose your approval, but your CLA does not require rebasing your PR. Another successful contribution. Hey, thank you. Though you have to do the CLA, I'm afraid.
Can you talk a bit about a day in the life of an approver and how that changed as the project became more popular, and perhaps what people sitting on this side of the fence can do or what they should not do to piss you off?
Yeah, I mean, I think so there are a number of PRs which come in every day for every, there are a large number of PRs that come in Kubernetes, and I think, that's certainly been one of the big challenges in Kubernetes driving this split into multiple repositories. Every PR is appreciated, but it's certainly hard to keep up. We're past the point where one person can keep up with the volume in Kubernetes. It is difficult to annoy me. The only thing that I think is most annoying, the thing that's most annoying is sometimes GitHub will erase comments if you do a rebase and push, and so it can be hard if we get into can you change this, and you do a full rebase, and we lose comments, but you've only addressed some of them. That can be frustrating all around because we have to go back and look at whether they actually were addressed or not, and go around on that. So that's a case where it can often be great to just push the incremental updates. And then at the end, we probably would go back and squash, in that case, if there were, 3 or 4 small changes that probably don't make sense. They're not thematically separate. They're just, revisions. And what I try to do as someone on this side is I try to go through the backlog and in some order go through them all and see which ones, are requiring my attention. So in other words, I haven't touched since the last code push, or there's no new discussion, and I will try to advance them all and get them closer to getting merged every day. I am not always good at it. It is, it can be hard sometimes, but yeah, when I'm in the groove and I can do it every morning, then it goes better, and you can certainly remind me to get back in the groove. Hey Justin, why aren't you doing have you done your morning run of PRs yet? I'll be no, I probably haven't, but it's a good idea. I think the recognizing that there are a lot of PRs going through, and making sure that the tests, if the tests aren't passing, by all means, if you don't know why they're not passing, then ask, right? It's absolutely fine, but going in and fixing the tests is great. It doesn't really require a lot of my attention to but if you have a test that isn't passing your test, if you have a PR that isn't passing tests, we won't look at it. Or I'll look at it once and be here's what you need to fix, and then I probably won't look at it again until you do something. Whether that's fix it or be I don't understand, which are both perfectly valid, but I will ignore it from that point on because I can't merge it anyway. I shouldn't merge it anyway. And then I think reminding me and others that it's time to do PR review is great. Also, if you want to become an approver or a maintainer or an LGTM, I always say, certainly in the kops project, in kops it's absolutely fine to go in and write LGTM, even if your LGTM doesn't mean anything. So feel free to go in and comment on other people's code, or respectfully comment on other people's code, or write LGTM if you've done it, or if you download it. If it's something that you're really interested in personally, then download it and build your own version and try it out. That's not always easy, but you can certainly do that. And that sort of feedback, I think on your PR, we had someone else say that they tried it and it worked, and that was great, and that is great, sort of helps me rationalize the idea that yes, this is both useful and works as intended. I think a lot of the contributors, a lot of the approvers that we've added in the last year or so have gone through that process where I always say, go ahead and go and review the code and other people's code and get in the practice of it and like look at what happens to the PRs and like the things which get called out and are problematic. And yeah, please do. That'd be awesome. I don't know if there's any other. Oh.
Thank you. So I have a question about the idea of splitting Kubernetes into hundreds of repositories. This is from a previous talk that you did. So my question is this. I know that a lot of open source tools are using the extras repository, which basically means that all extra packages, all controllers for AWS, Azure, and stuff like that can go to the extras repository, which really makes it a lot easier to maintain, especially with the ability to have like a per directory approvers and stuff like that. It's really easy to maintain, package it up, and release it, like daily. So maybe you can share why was that decision, to split to hundreds of repositories instead of one. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, so we had this thing called the Kubernetes incubator, and it was one repository. So it was, I think it's still around. So it is, you can see I haven't been there in a while. I guessed wrong. Kubernetes/incubator?
Yes.
Is it? You're right. Did that anyway, we definitely used to have one mono repo with everything in there. I guess, yeah, I don't know what's happening. Anyway, we've gone through various iterations of an incubator idea. When we had one repo, it was challenging to know, like, there was no real process. There was very light process on getting anything in there at all. And it basically, stuff tended to accumulate in there and wasn't really, didn't really have owners that were responsible for keeping it up. It wasn't clear when we would remove stuff because people were getting confused about, just the sheer volume in there and of different qualities. Like, it's always hard to remove code that someone has, worked hard on. But when users are like when it doesn't work for users, then we have to address that. So the current idea is that there's still core repos that are sort of the hardest to create a new core repo. There's a very high bar for that. There is a much lower bar for this sort of Kubernetes SIGs idea. And the idea here is that the SIGs are the gatekeepers. So I guess, yeah, Kubernetes SIG scheduling has approved this Poseidon project, which is a firmament-based Kubernetes scheduler. So I actually do know what that is, but I don't, that's only because I happen to. But I would normally have no idea what that was about. But the idea is that SIG scheduling has decided that this is actually a valid thing that they want to investigate in their project. So the Kubernetes SIGs organization in GitHub is a way to try to achieve some of the goals of extras, but without having, I think we also hit, as well as the people things, we also hit some sort of technical limitations around around GitHub, project rules and ownership and that sort of thing. So I think we went with multiple repos. I personally suspect we will have to combine them back again in some virtual way. Like I think Android has, this magic tool which combines multiple repos. So we certainly will need some method of knowing what Kubernetes 1.12 will be. But that's, I guess, some of the reasons we're trying to balance a bunch of forces around, trying to make sure that code is owned by people, that it's clear who owns it, it's clear why we created it, and that some process was gone through in order to do that. And that we went with multiple repos, I think, to try to keep that more lightweight in terms of not using the owner's file exclusively and keep the repos smaller, maybe help minimize the interdependencies. This is what we're trying at the moment. We've gone through a number of iterations. I think it took like about a year to decide that incubator was not. I think it probably took 2 years to decide to move from incubator to SIG repositories, and so I hope we'll stick with this one for a while. It's actually a great time though to if you have a bigger project that you want to start, we now actually, the gates are open to do that. If you want to contribute I can't remember, if you want to contribute, like if kube to IAM, right, the IAM provider for AWS wanted to come in, they could now do that underneath sig-AWS. If you want to do a new scheduler, we now have a place to do that is, like Poseidon would probably not want to go would not be allowed into the core right now. It's probably an experiment. It has a pretty high bar to get into the core. We don't necessarily want to tell people, yeah, you should turn on Poseidon in your core clusters. I don't know from experience, I'm just saying like that's sort of the goal. And we now have a place to put those. So you can do experiments in a like neutral ground with the full Kubernetes infrastructure behind you in terms of all that E2E testing and all of this, all the magic bots and the wonderful CLA bot. You can have it all like and be sort of associated or part of the Kubernetes project without having to go through quite as many administrative hoops as you have had to in the past to get things into core. Are there more questions, or are there more PRs in the queue? I don't know if anyone else has been as brave as this gentleman. Everybody on time? We're doing okay. So how do we want to spend the rest of the time here? Do we want to do a design sort of discussion? I think we've done a lot of like talking about how to do a PR, probably more than I had intended. But I think we've had some great questions, and so thank you for those. I don't know if we want to talk about like some design type topics. So if you had a deeper, we had some questions about like deeper design issues, and we can try to get into like how bigger. So this is like I know what change I want to make in kops or in Kubernetes, and I can go and do my PR now. That's the goal, I hope. And one of the more difficult things is when you have a more complicated PR and you're not really sure how to do it. So what do people want to do?
So for people who just want to contribute, but they don't have like a PR they want to get in, looking through the labels and things, there's some good starter issue ones, but they seem pretty old. So what would you recommend on like before we start coding, a good process for everyone to follow or set of guidelines on making sure we're not wasting our time and yours?
Yeah, so definitely, we've tried a bunch of these things like good starter, like labeling some PRs with good starter issue, or I can't remember, we have a variety of terms that essentially mean like this is a great place to start and get going. I would certainly ping the person that created the issue or that added the label to be like, is this actually a good starter issue? Do you happen to know of anyone else working on it? Some of the things that are good starter issues are not good starter issues anymore. Some of them we've now realized are actually very hard, and yeah, it would be good to clean them up if they remain. Is there one you had in mind?
Yeah. Let me find it.
Okay, this is good. Well, I've turned off my Slack for obvious reasons. Something, yeah. I hope I've turned off my Slack. Please don't test that. In kops? 1592. 1592. 1592 or 5092? This one? Uh-huh, cool. This would be a good starter issue to work on. Like one of the things I'm thinking about doing is pairing. So the issue here is that you are able to change. Oh, actually, this is interesting. The issue here is that you're able to set some objects in the API. We create a secret. It's one of the sort of kops top-level objects, and then we have some heuristics that try to figure out whether or not whether after an update, a rolling update is required. So for people that don't know, in kops, you do an update which changes the configuration in AWS, but for example, even if you change the launch configuration, sometimes you have to reboot all your instances, well, certainly all your masters, or in this case, or all your instances. I think this might actually be all your instances. And that's called a rolling update, where we bring each node down in turn. It's slightly hard to know when to do that. So we have some heuristics that try to help. In this case, the heuristics have failed, and we say that no rolling update is required, when in fact, I think, my belief is that every node must be restarted. Depending on the type of secret, yes. So probably what we'd have to do is the logic. So the way the logic currently works is there's a AWS launch configuration, and we would probably have to encode the secrets in some way in that launch configuration so that it would appear as a difference. So the easy way to do that would be to like loop through the secrets and compute a hash of the secrets and put that as a comment or something like that, or just some way of injecting it into the script. So it is not a trivial issue, but it is not a terrible issue. One of the things I've thought about doing is like some form of like live coding pair programming, where either I drive, should we try it? Would people want to try this? This is, okay. Is this gonna be fun or not? All right, we can try it. If anyone wants to leave, that is fine. I don't know what time are we scheduled to go into? It is 9:15. Are we scheduled to go until 9:40, is that right? All right.
You need 1 minute to launch my pull request, which I just added.
All right, we'll do another pull request, and then we'll... And you have CLA, so this is... Hey ho, KubeCon! This fixes docs for people who manage their subnets through Terraform without kops and use kops 1.9. This released the key subnet type were added because... Okay, I don't fully understand, but I'll look at the code. Oh, just docs, cool. So the docs don't reflect the Terraform output as it is today, and I think we can actually, presumably we can confirm that by, so we have all those tests that generate Terraform output and check that it is as we expect. And if we look at the output, we can see on this line, subnet type. There it is, and it is indeed there. So this looks like a good PR. So we will merge. That will approve it. Oh. And in this case, though, this one is probably simple enough that you should just force push the rebase and just force push. Don't bother with the extra commit in this case. Missing quote.
What is common practice here? Just add another commit or just rebase it?
In this case, just rebase, because it's one. There's only one thing, and we're not going to forget. What's your name? Shall I give you credit, anonymous audience member?
No, I commented as well. So.
Oh, okay, cool. See, acting as a reviewer. There is a missing quote here. Perfect. All right. Let's see. So if we wanted to, while we're here, let's see. File. I presume everyone can see this, right? Yeah, no. Hold on just 1 second. I'm sorry. That's okay. Am I getting IDE heckled? This is Visual Studio Code. I also have IntelliJ, whatever Go stuff on here. Yes, Go land, yes. All right, so this is that issue. So I will typically start a new branch. Do you remember the issue number?
1592. What's the common practice for naming a branch?
The Branch name doesn't matter at all. You can find some amusing branch names in there. If it's a simpler, you can either name it, if it's a simpler bug fix, I'll try to name it after the fix 5092. This one probably deserves its own name, something like include hash of keys in thingy. But the branch name doesn't matter at all, so it's only for your own tracking. Yeah. And so, let's see, so we need to change the launch configuration. So, okay, I think I can do this now. All right, so we know where we're looking. There's a launch configuration task, which is sort of the, so the way kops works under the hood is that there's a model which builds tasks, and tasks correspond to AWS objects, or GCE objects, or DO objects. And the model is, well, there's the API objects themselves, which are the cluster and the instance groups and the secrets that you create. And the model layer is what moves or translates from the API objects to various tasks. And then each of these tasks is sort of like a Terraform task. And actually at the bottom, you'll be able to see that we actually can generate from a task, we can generate, well, this is a complicated one, but we can generate the CloudFormation form of a task, and we can generate the Terraform form of a task. We've chosen a big one to start with, but that's okay. And then the primary logic for kops itself is the render AWS function in each, which will go and effectively try to create or synchronize the state of the task. So you see here we have a bunch of fields which describe, very much like Terraform, how what this AWS launch configuration should look like. And then in render AWS, we will try to, let's pick an easier one. Well, we'll try to create it. Let's see. This is actually a terrible one to do because you can't change a launch configuration. In a subnet, we will do a render AWS. So we will, well, here we only try to create the subnet. In other more complicated ones, we will try to modify the subnet or the object in question to match. So you can do sort of a live update of the object. The other task in implementing a task is to implement the find method. And this is how, so if you're familiar with Terraform has the notion of a TF state file, which holds, for a particular task, the ID and the resources, the ID of the resource in the cloud. Kops does not have that. So the find method is the one that is responsible for reconstructing the state as it exists in the cloud. So this is like most Kubernetes controllers, where we try to reconcile the actual state of the world against the expected state of the world. And the model creates the expected state of the world in the fields there. The find method is what goes to the cloud and finds the actual state of the world. The kops logic is what compares the fields. And so when you do a dry run, for example, we'll do a field level diff, and the output that you see is the result of that diff. And then if there is a difference, then we call the render method, and render AWS is what actually goes and will try to synchronize the two worlds. So you can actually see here that we have a potential bug, which is if the CIDR changes or the AZ changes or the VPC changes, we don't do anything about that. And I think, yes, so right here we have a check changes method here, which is what catches the problem if you have not, if we're actually trying to change the VPC, then we'll actually fire an error that the field is immutable. So that's how we sort of prevent that. So we try to make sure that either we can change it on the fly, or we will validate that it hasn't changed. If you look at the Kubernetes API machinery, there's a sort of nicer validation approach, a more structured validation approach, and we have started to move to that, but that happens in validation.go, we have some things, and we have some validation methods that, for example, check that SSH access is a valid CIDR and Kubernetes API access is a valid CIDR, and other things like that, I'll just say, because it's not. And so that is how we check at the API level, but we also do a secondary check at the task level, so that if we did let you change the VPC, which honestly I think we do, we would still catch it later on when we go to update. Sorry. Anyway, what we want to do is we want to make sure that the launch configuration script, so recall our problem is that secrets are not updated in the launch configuration. And so what we need to do is make sure that one of these fields changes, and we're probably going to change the script. So the launch configuration script is in user data, I believe, which is actually right there, user data. And you can see that the user data is not actually built here because it's built by the model. So we have to go and find where the user data was set. Sorry, user data. 700. Okay, let us go into, let's just find where it is. So if we go into the model. Couldn't have picked an easier one, huh? Okay. No, this is, we'll get there. We might not. Yeah, we might not finish, but we can at least start to get an idea of how it works. So the actual script is generated right here in Bootstrap script. And there is the Bootstrap script. And you can see that what happens is we eventually will go and essentially apply some template expansions into a template. So IG spec is the instance group spec, and this one is actually only put in here for the purpose of invalidating the rolling update logic. So if we search for this, we should be able to find it. I think there's something wrong with my search. It's just not. There should be a script in here. Let's see if we can find the script. Let's just find the script. Anyone know where the script is? It's in resources, isn't it? There it is. So there's the script, and you can see that it has some template things, and what we want to do is probably put in a secret hash. So the idea is what we'll do is if we have a, let's do this, secret hash. We put in the hash here, and then what will happen is the hash will go in and change the script, and that means that we will now detect that the script has changed and that a rolling update is required. We could try to be more generic and have like a generic hash type thing here, but let's keep going. I probably will think about this more deeply before I actually submit this one. So we need to put that into the script builder. So we would do something like this. So we would do secret hash is a func. I really should have accepted the oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I really should have accepted the func of string. Yeah. Secret hash is a func of string, so we're going to return, let's do a var b bytes dot buffer. I don't have autocomplete. All right, let's just, this may be pseudocode, which is what by pseudocode I mean when I make a mistake, just assume that I don't know. This is great. Just assume that I know what I'm doing and I'm just testing you. But anyway, this one will be pseudocode. So we need our, yeah, okay, this is getting worse. So we don't even have the secrets in here right now. So we need to add the secrets. Yeah, exactly. So we'll loop through the secrets in range secrets. And do we want to hash all the secrets or just some of the secrets? It's only some of the secrets that contribute to the hash. So if is hashed, yeah, so we're going to have to, so we'll do b.write s.hash. We're just totally doing pseudocode at this point. And then we will do a final hash equals b.hash. That's not right. And we'll return string final hash. That is very, thank you. I think I'm going to stop there because I think that that's sort of the core of it. In other words, so you can see here that it is not a great starter issue. We still have, when we try to build this, as well as the absolute nonsense that code is, we'll also have to pass in now the list of secrets into here, into resource node up. So we'll have to go and find where that was and sort of wire in the list of secrets. And I think we'll have to go from there back up a level to like presumably pipe it down. So I think this would actually be a good one to do as a pair exercise, but not one-handed live. So I think, yeah, what do people think? Should we do this sometime as a live pairing exercise, or do people have fun? I don't know. How did the experiment go? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Yay? All right, cool. Are we, any other questions, or we can go and just talk, or, yeah, that's probably, I think we're holding up the wonderful AV crew, so I think, should we call time, and we can talk some more if anyone wants to, but yeah, thank you so much for participating in this little experiment. And thank you for our PRs. Well done.